it was accusing me of having affairs with a musician, my ex-partner, and he was on these, like, a drug binge where I saw him no eating, little to no sleep, and he would just use cocaine and drink all day long. Okay. And that would go for a period of time, and then a major blowout, and then he'd get sick and pass out, and then feel really awful, and often, including this time, would start a period of sobriety after that.
Okay. Now I'm going to take you to mid-July 2013, the Tokyo press tour for Lone Ranger. Can you please tell the jury about that particular trip and the events relating to Mr. Depp?
Sure. He was promoting Lone Ranger, and I had just met his kids at the premiere in Los Angeles shortly before this tour started. They found out about me.
Amber, I'm going to just ask you not to go through that.
Sure.
Just take us to Tokyo, please. Okay.
So I believe we went from that stop to Tokyo with the kids, and he had difficulty with drinking in front of them. He was trying to hide it, and yet he was dealing with some stress around his career. I didn't have a lot of details, but he was drinking at the restaurant, and the kids were kind of, noticing, but not really sure what to make of it.
Objection calls for speculation and hearsay.
She didn't say what they said.
I'll sustain us to the last
Okay.
part of the answer.
Okay, please continue, but don't say what they said. Okay, the kids said.
Anyway, Johnny became upset with me for judging him. He was, it was like I couldn't win if I didn't do anything, if I didn't say anything to him about the drinking, if I didn't acknowledge it, it got worse. If I did acknowledge it, it was my fault, and I was nagging. And I get it, I wouldn't like to be told what to do either. So, but it made him really angry, and the kids were on this press tour, and I was just concerned about them. I was concerned about them hearing us. Johnny screamed at me in the hotel room, and all I could think were the kids were in an adjoining room. What if they could hear us? I had just met them, and I didn't want them to think poorly of me and hate me, not knowing what was going on, in our behind closed doors. I remember him, it was name calling, and he eventually passed out.
Do you recall what names he called you? Do you recall what he said?
I heard at this time, nagging bitch all the time, called me a cunt. He even said that he made a mistake with me, and that he didn't want to, that when we touched back down, he'd get rid of me and I'd go back to, he said some disgusting things to me. I don't know if I need to repeat it.
Okay, let's go. Michelle, can you bring up Defendant's Exhibit 1090? You indicated, I think, that he passed out at the end of that. Did you take this picture?
I did.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 1090.
No objection, Your Honor. Thank you.
1090 in evidence. You publish.
Thank you. And where was Mr. Depp when you took this picture?
He was passed out with his head in a table in the hotel room, in our hotel room, not the kids' hotel room, in Tokyo, on that press tour.
All right. Now I'm going to take you to August 2013. What, if any, discussions did you start having with Mr. Depp about moving in with him?
Well, after this, I was getting close to his kids, and he had a stint of sobriety shortly after that, and it felt really good again. And shortly after that, he started suggesting that I let him rent my apartment for the vultures. That's what he called the press. And he said now that we were like a known couple, now that it was out in the press, that my apartment wasn't like safe effectively for me. And I, I had a modest apartment in Los Angeles. And so he started saying I needed to have security on me, or we'd rent out the neighboring houses because of the vultures. And it was a conversation. And then that conversation evolved into that I should move in with him. Always wanted me to go with his security guards, wanted me to have his credit card. Obviously, I wouldn't accept that. But the conversation about moving in became, hard to resist because I was increasingly becoming a part of his life, and also loving his family and feeling like, more stability would mean more stability with him and his struggles with drug and alcohol use. And I thought I would minimize some of the jealousy and insecurity that he had. It was hard for me to justify working. Every audition, every meeting, every script I got was a negotiation or a fight. I had to justify it like as if I was saying, hey, let's have an open relationship. It was, and I thought that would be minimized if I could make him feel more secure. By, if we live together, certainly there would be more security, right? And that was my reasoning.
So you talked about still reading scripts and things. What, if anything, did you do differently in terms of pursuing your acting career?
Well, I've always been really independent, and I've never imagined not working. I've worked from the earliest time I can imagine. I come from, parents who worked until they literally couldn't anymore. I never imagined myself having to explain my job or justify my job, but I did, and I am independent, and I see myself as independent and strong-willed, and I having to justify taking work by saying, I'm supporting my parents, I'm supporting my sister, I'm supporting my family, I have to work. And he would say, you don't have to work, kid. Let me take care of you. My woman doesn't have to work. And that sounds really sweet and really romantic in some way, but it became a real fight. Every time I got a script, it was what kind of, how I was dressing, what kind of behavior I'd have, how did I have a sex scene? And then I started saying, no, I won't take the sex scenes, or, I'll take the part where I don't play, that kind of character. Or then I started minimizing the kinds of kissing scenes that I had. And eventually I had to change the wardrobe that I could have in the movie. I couldn't have a sex scene, but that all, it didn't happen all at once, of course. It was little thing after little thing after little thing. And eventually I found myself pushing as many scripts off my desk as I could, picking the ones that had minimal makeup, dress as conservative as possible, finding ways to minimize the scenes I had where I had a romantic involvement of any kind. It was a constant battle and negotiation.
So let me take you back. Did you, as a result of your discussions with Mr. Depp about moving in, did there come a time that you did move in with him?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please, and let me ask you this. You've talked about penthouse. We've heard a little bit about penthouse appointments and suites. Could you just explain to the jury the different places that Mr. Depp had in Los Angeles and what they were called, just so we have some context here when we're going through all this?
It's a little confusing, I imagine. He had about, I think, 4 or 5 mansions in this beautiful, border of Beverly Hills and West Hollywood. And they were all in a cul-de-sac, and we called it Sweetser because that was the name of the street. And there 5 houses, I think 5 houses, it could be 4, all effectively he had the whole street. Then he had about 5 penthouses downtown on the same floor of the Eastern Columbia building, which you've heard about, the ECB. And Sweetser was, Johnny's kingdom. One of those houses was like a whole house was his man cave. It was a studio, and it was where he made music and hung out. And we spent some time in there, but that was effectively Johnny's, place. And then there was the downtown places, and they were effectively empty save for some furniture and one of Johnny's friends, Isaac, who you met. And he lived there some point before Johnny and I eventually decided to move in together.
Let me just stop you there. I just want to make sure we're clear. Are we talking about the penthouses or are we talking about Sweetser? For where
Isaac lived in the penthouses.
Okay.
The rest of them were pretty much empty. And my best friend, who I was very, 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 very close to, went through a breakup, and he very kindly insisted on moving her into this penthouse. And of course, she said no for the first few times, but he insisted and said they were empty and he would love to have her move down there. And he very kindly moved my best friend downtown. Problem is,
Rocky?
yeah,
Okay.
Rocky Pennington. But the problem is it's like 30, 45 minutes from West Hollywood, where my place was, which we call Orange at the time.
Okay. So when did you move into the penthouses?
Shortly after he moved Rocky, my best friend, into the penthouse. So she was in one of these empty-ish apartments, and somewhere around that time, I think it took me some time actually, but after that, I eventually agreed to move in with him and give up my place, although that made me pretty nervous, to be honest. But we were in this relationship that was very serious, and we were constantly traveling. Also, as another part of it is we were in LA for a matter of days or weeks. I'd go do a job, he'd go do a job, I'd come back for a photo shoot or a red carpet, go on a location, go visit him on a location. And there was an incredible amount of travel and movement. So we weren't really, again, living the day-to-day that you might normally with a partner, where you have a home and you move in together and you have one home. We didn't have that. It was
Okay.
very different.
I'm going to take you to September of 2013. What were you filming at that time? London Fields?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I was filming London Fields. I just started.
All right. And did there come a time that you became engaged to Mr. Depp? Well,
Yeah, it was difficult because in that role was a very difficult role. I mean, every time, every scene that involved sexuality or romance was like, I'd look at that on the page and it felt like I'd feel my gut tighten because I knew it was going to be an issue. But Johnny dropped me off. I gave him the script. I sent him pictures of what I was wearing in my wardrobe fittings. I sent him everything. I shared my script with his team, and the fighting eventually kind of minimized. It was clear I was going to do this job, and I told myself I had to do this job. And Johnny had to go to London, I think, for some pre-production stuff for a movie he was going to do a smaller part in. I think it was called, I think this was Into the Woods, is my best guess. So he dropped me off in London. And when he dropped me off in London, we had a few days at this hotel that we first, consummated our relationship in, as when we were on the London press tour, and our relationship developed. That was the same hotel. We were in this same room, which is Johnny liked to be in the same room. And it was really sweet. He got down on one knee and said, I want you to be my girl forever, my woman, my girl. I want you to be the rest of my life. Say yes to me. He said he wanted to spend every day. He promised me that every day when I woke up, that I would wake up and he would make me smile at least once. And that would be his goal. And, you know, I looked into his eyes and I saw my future hope, you know, like blind hope, so in love. It was one of the most, I can't describe that kind of joy, you know. I thought, you know, if we were married, then this is real. This is real. This isn't a thing of, this isn't chaotic and this will change. You know, I had so much hope in that moment. And I just said to him over and over again, are you serious? Are you real? Are you serious? Are you sure? Because he didn't have a ring. So I thought, is this an impulse thing? You know, my experience, Johnny, could be very impulsive. And he said over and over again, be my woman forever. I want you to be my wife, my wife, my wife. I, of course, cried. We had a wonderful evening, and he left shortly after, and I was like, the next day I had to go to work, and I couldn't tell anyone, and I wasn't sure. Part of me was worried that he didn't mean it, or you know, or that he wasn't sure. You know, I just didn't want it to be an impulse thing, so I didn't want to mention it. I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to. And I kind of felt, I walked around for a few days like I had butterflies under my skin. And then he brought my dad out to London with my best friends. And my dad told me, you know, Johnny has asked me permission for your hand in marriage. And I felt like the luckiest woman in the world.
So while you were filming London Fields and Johnny had gone back to LA, what, if any, issues did you have with him on fraternizing with the cast? I'm going to ask, Michelle, can you pull up Defendant's Exhibit 188, please?
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay.
Your Honor, I'm going to, let's pull up 188A. I've redacted everything but what Mr. Depp says on 188A.
188A.
That's admission against interest. Do you have that? While they're working on that, can you tell us what transpired between you and Mr. Depp when you wanted to do something with a cast member?
So, as I said, he came to London for his own work and also dropped me off in London, where I had to be for a few months to film this movie. And he asked me to marry him. He brought my best friends and my dad out. They left. And shortly after they left, my co-star, one of my co-stars, invited me to go to a concert with him and some of the cast to kind of break the ice, and I'd be working with them for the next few months. And I had already, you know, I already knew I couldn't be photographed, even if it was platonic. I couldn't be photographed with men or women that other people could possibly spin as romantic. I had learned that but in January, the hard way. So I asked him permission if I could go to this concert with the cast. And I, I said, Johnny, that like, he's my co-star.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Don't tell us what the co-star said. Just tell us what your communication was with Mr. Depp.
Objection, hearsay. Her communications are hearsay.
That's a stating objection.
I'm not sure I understand.
If you want approach.
Yes.
I'm getting caught up on the comment section. Clearly, I missed something. Oh, LB's joining us. I hope you're feeling good today, boo. What happened here? What?
That the relationship would be off, and that I was foolish, naive for
Okay, good. That's
thinking
not just
that
me.
people could invite me to a concert in a platonic way. I tried to say that it was fine.
Objection,
that it was-
hearsay.
She's testifying about what Mr. Depp said. I don't understand.
I'll agree with that objection.
Please continue.
Yeah, he said I was foolish and naive, that no one could invite me to. How could I be so dumb to think that somebody could just invite me to a concert? Why would they want to hang out with me? Obviously, it was because they wanted more from me, and that I probably wanted more too. I was basically asking for it. You're going to go backstage. What are you going to say to the band? And then I know how this plays out, and who's the other girl going to be there? And how could you be so stupid? How could you be so foolish? You're more naive. You should be smarter than this. And I apologized. I stayed, that whole evening, I think for a few hours, I spent on the phone with him, texting, calling, or talking, hanging up. He'd hang up on me, be upset, and then send me cryptic messages about my foolishness. And, I'm already doing a movie where I play this, character where I was empowered. Like, I read the script and I thought this character was empowered sexually. And by the time I got Johnny's feedback on it, I had been convinced that actually I was just being used. That I was just being used. It was clear that that was all I had to offer, and I was too foolish to see it. And
I'm just going to stop you right there because I'd like you to take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 188A.
Mhm.
Is that in front of you? Do you recognize this portion of the text chain between you and Mr. Depp?
Oh, we're playing
Yes, I do.
bingo.
Okay, and this is
We're
on
playing
September
bingo.
9, 2013?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and are these statements Mr. Depp made to you during that evening that you just described to the jury?
Yes.
You're going to remove the admission of Defendant's 188A?
Any objection?
No objection.
188A.
Yeah, Elaine, Amicon Bridge is cutting her off a lot today.
I think we're gonna need to give it to you a hard copy.
All right.
Right, thank you, Your Honor. And if I can draw your attention to it, he first says, I don't want to make anything an issue, baby, but I literally have been on the ground just 14 fucking hours from leaving your side. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then he says, you know what I want, who I am, and where I want to go with us. You know very well what type of fucking man I am, and yet you lay a gauntlet before me that you know is the very species of danger that will always attract me into a very tempting test. What's behind that door? Almost impossible to not take you on. You want me to roll the dice? This sounds more like an aggravated ultimatum than soft words that could help us make both feel better. Don't test me, please. Did he tell you that?
Yes, he did.
And what did you understand that to mean?
It was clear. It was a threat that if I wanted to be,
Objection, speculation.
I think she can say what she understood it to mean.
Sustain the objection.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then to the filming of Mordecai with Mr. Bettany in October, November 2013. Where did that take place?
in London.
Okay. And what, if any, involvement did you have? Were you there for any part of that filming?
For part of it, I happened to be in London already for the film I was just telling you about. And Johnny came to London shortly after to film his own movies. He did the smaller, I think it was a smaller role in Into the Woods, and then he was filming Mordecai after that. So after I finished my movie, I moved in with him into his house in London, a rented house in London.
Okay. And describe your experiences during that time period with Mr. Depp.
It was really touch and go. He was filming with Paul Bettany, and there were days when he wouldn't come home, or they couldn't get him up out of on set. He'd be asleep in his trailer, sleeping whatever he'd done the night before off. I remember he missed a few days of work that way. It struck me because in my experience in our job, you don't miss work. It doesn't matter how sick you are, you go. You know, it's millions of dollars every single day they're filming, and I had not experienced someone who could effectively just control the set like that, you know, I mean, to that extent. And one day he didn't come home, and I was worried sick. I found out that he was in a hotel room with Paul Bettany.
Objection, hearsay.
Okay. Move forward.
When he came home, they had to carry him home.
Objection, hearsay.
Did you see that?
I watched it.
Okay.
Oh, so you learned what it,
I
okay.
watched. It actually, I was shocked that he could do it. One of the security guards carried Johnny like a baby into the house, and I looked at that, and I mean, his boots were hanging over the security guard's arm, who had to negotiate getting through the doorway, carrying Johnny like this. And I watched this. His assistants
Right.
and the other security guards shaking their head, you know, just shaking their head, acknowledging this is how bad it is. And I remember thinking, this has got to be it. Like, this has got to change. This is it. And he was understandably very, very sick for at least 2 days, is my recollection. And in that 2 days, I had a lot of conversations with this team. I won't say what they were, but I felt at that juncture very encouraged that everybody and myself were on the same page. And I felt encouraged that we were in a new chapter, that Johnny had finally hit rock bottom, and finally he felt like changing for good. And I felt buoyed, supported by these conversations I was having with people that he was close to, that he trusted.
November 2013, did you have any contact with Lily Rose that led to any discussions with Mr. Depp?
Objection leading.
What, if any, communications did you have with Lily Rose in November 2013?
Objection cultures hearsay leading.
I'm asking what her connection was. I didn't ask what she said.
Sustain the objection.
Okay. November 2013, what, if any, interaction did you have with Lily Rose without saying anything she said?
Objection hearsay.
It's interaction, Your Honor. I'm not asking for what she said.
If you lay a foundation out.
Okay. Did there come a time in November 2013 that you saw Lily Rose?
Yes, they came to stay with us for some time in the winter. Yeah, around November, I believe, 2013.
When you said they, who were you referring to?
Johnny's kids, Jack and Lily Rose.
All right. And was there a particular incident that led to a disagreement with Mr. Depp?
Objection leading.
Sustain.
What, if any, interaction did you have with Lily Rose that led to an argument with Mr. Depp?
Objection leading.
That, what, if any?
You've reapproached me.
Hot Mess Express today. Lord bless it.
Did you have an argument with Mr. Depp relating to Lily Rose in November 2013?
Yes.
Can you please describe that?
Well, these kids were, I found them to be these beautiful, wildly intelligent little weirdos in the best way. They were, I was falling in love with them. And, they were in my life at that time, a short amount of time, but I loved it. And I started to feel very protective, and, Johnny's sobriety meant that he was there and then he wasn't. And the nature of our lives with the travel and work meant he was there and then he wasn't. And Lily Rose, at some point, had a crush on a.
Objection hearsay. Lack of foundation.
I'll overrule.
Thank you. Please continue.
This argument happened because Johnny was. I didn't agree that this gentleman, it was a famous musician, over the age of 18, spent the night at the house, and I felt protective over Lily Rose and concerned. And naturally, they were not my children. It's not my place, and I understand that. I know it's a sensitive subject, so I understand why Johnny got so upset with me. But that and the introduction of the weed with his daughter, she was so young, I just felt protective. Again, it's not my place. I understand that. And I made him really angry by weighing in on that.
Did there come a time that there was a family engagement gathering?
Well, we celebrated Thanksgiving out in London. The kids were there. There was a stint of sobriety following how sick he got on set with Paul Bettany after one of his drug binges, and he kind of just came alive again. He even played a prank on me about having like relapsed when he hadn't relapsed. You know, I started to kind of feel that with the kids being around. I did think that maybe this was it. We were on a good path, meaning to sobriety, that this was it. And our life was peaceful for a minute. You know, it went back to being wonderful. There were these moments that just felt so wonderful.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
I'll just sustain the objection. Okay.
Take us to the engagement. There was this engagement party, correct?
Then, yes, come Christmas of 2013, Johnny had rented this beautiful mansion in Malibu on the beach. It was gorgeous. And he brought my family out, and his family was out, obviously, in LA. And we stayed in this rented mansion, and we're all together for the holidays. And one evening, we were going to his mother's house. His mother, who you've heard about, was older and sick, but at home being cared for. And one evening we're going to have dinner, Christmas dinner there with her around the time of her birthday as well. And my best friend said, "You should."
Objection, hearsay.
Sorry.
Wasn't having to prove the truth of the matter, but go ahead.
Um,
Go past that. What did you do?
We went to Betty Sue's house, his mother's house, and Johnny proposed in front of our families in this big, surprise. He surprised me, got down on one knee, and I cried and hugged my mother and hugged his mother, and he gave me this enormous diamond ring, and it was a nice time.
We take you into January, February 2014. You employed a woman named Kate James. Is that correct?
Objection, leading.
What, if any, relationship did you have with Kate James?
She was my assistant at the time. I hired her sometime in 2012 and had as minimal contact with her as I possibly could. So,
And why is that?
She was difficult, troubled, and inconsistent. She drank on the job and stuff like that, and her behavior was
Objection, relevance.
horrible.
She's already testified. Kate James has testified, and I think bias. We can
I'll allow that. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Please describe for the jury what job responsibilities Kate had and how you communicated with her, and kind of how that worked.
Objection, compound.
Ooh.
Thank you.
We had minimal person-to-person interaction because I was hardly ever in LA. If I was there for a few days at a time. And Johnny and I kind of lived in this insular bubble anyway when we were together. But we would send emails, texts, and a lot of voice memos, voice notes. And, if I found that if I said, "Kate, you left the car running with your doors open and your kids in the car on the street."
Objection, hearsay.
She's not testifying. She's testifying about context.
Sustained objection. Next question.
All right. I'm going to ask you to take a look at Defendant's Exhibit 209.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay grounds. It's still hearsay.
Ms. Hurd, did you? May I lay the foundation first? Ms. Hurd, did you communicate with Kate James by email in the ordinary course of your business?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to take a look at defendants 209. Is this a communication that was between you and Kate James that was in the ordinary course of business with her as an employee?
Yes, it is.
So, Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of defendants exhibit 209. Business records exception.
Still hearsay, Your Honor.
Business record exception gets the business record, but it's hearsay. If there's hearsay involved inside the business record, there's still objection to hearsay.
Your Honor, the business records exception, I mean, I don't agree. I think that's the point that hearsay can.
Approach.
What, if any, communications did you have with Kate James about your issues with Mr. Depp?
Objection hearsay.
Your Honor, Ms. James has testified.
I sustain the objection.
All right, we can take that down, Michelle. In the February, I'm going to jump to February, March 2016. What, if any, communications did you have with Mr. Depp about a prenup?
Well, after the engagement, but before the engagement party, I started to feel like it would make, I know that he earned significantly more than me, he's a successful actor. I wanted to eliminate any doubt in his mind and in other people's minds. So I brought it up to him and brought it up to my therapist.
Objection hearsay.
She's just saying that she brought it up to her therapist. She's not saying what she said. But please focus on Mr. Depp, okay?
Of course. Johnny said he would tear it up. He said, if you ever brought one up to me, or if I ever saw one, got my hands on it, I'd tear it up. Only way out of this is death. Only way out of this is death. And I thought it would be like, I didn't care either way, but I did feel that it would eliminate suspicion or doubt, and it would make things easier. And I told him over and over again, are you sure? Are you sure? Maybe we should do this. And one time he said to me, he's like, kid, are you already thinking of how you're getting out of this? Are you already planning to get out of this, kid? You already planning on leaving? That was the same. It was around the same time as the moving in together conversation. He accused me of having 1 foot out. and they kind of were happening around the same time. You know, I still had my apartment and we were engaged now. He was asking me to redecorate Sweetser, his main house, and kind of move into the ECB building downtown where my best friend was living at this time. While the decorations and the remodeling had been done on Sweetser. And so these conversations were kind of happening about how to build our future together and how we were going to move forward together. And I would have forgotten about the extent that we had those conversations early on in the engagement if it hadn't been for my therapist's notes.
I'm sorry, if it hadn't been for your what?
If it hadn't been for my therapist's notes, which were taken at the time when I was talking to her about this and my conversations with
Objection, hearsay.
Okay.
I'll sustain the
We'll move
objection.
on. Okay. Let's take it to March 2014. Did there come a time there was an engagement party?
Yes, so it was March 2014.
Please describe for the jury.
We had an engagement party, and we decided that when we did get married, we'd have a small wedding, you know, something intimate. But you know, our lives were kind of big, and his life was extremely big, and we needed to incorporate. We wanted to have a bigger engagement party than a wedding, you know, and kind of get our guests in, our family, our friends, and have a big event of it, as opposed to making the wedding something that was big. And you know, so we kind of put it on the engagement party and had a bunch of people, a lot of friends, business acquaintances, a lot of family. I had all of my family friends and my childhood friends come out for it, and I even invited my therapist. It was, you know, a big event.
Okay. And describe what took place at the engagement party.
Well, we walk in together and we took some pictures and said a few hellos, and then Johnny disappeared upstairs in, I guess it's like a coat room or something. It was in a big abandoned building that was rented out for events, and he disappeared upstairs almost the entire party, I would say. Just kind of came down at the end when we were leaving, and came down once because he was at the time sharing drugs with my dad.
Objection. Speculation. Lack of foundation.
How do you know that he was sharing drugs with your dad?
I was there. I watched it.
Damn, she's throwing dad under the bus.
Please continue.
All right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with this. I mean, we can switch to just this one. Sky typically shows us the documents, which is why we picked them. But Law and Crime does the split screen.
In New York.
it's a fashion event, but it's just a major red carpet event. And so you have to be invited, and it's kind of a thing, you know. And we were invited that year, and I had already gone for the previous year or two, and this year we were going to go together. And at some point in the evening, we're sitting across the table, and Johnny starts asking me about this woman. He thought I was looking at this woman in a sexual way, and I kind of turned it around on him and said that exact
Objection, hearsay.
It's context, Your Honor. This is context.
Sustain the objection.
Okay. Just say what Mr. Depp said then. I guess you can't tell us what you said to him.
Okay. He was accusing me of flirting, and that's how the argument started. I don't recall what other accusations I was fielding at that moment, but typically in my experience with him, it wasn't just one. So you'd make a point, and then he would go on to a different accusation. But I remember that what started it is this accusation that I had been flirting at this event. We get back to the hotel room, and Johnny shoves me and kind of grabs me by the collarbone area, like not really my neck, but top of my neck, above my collarbone, below my neck. I think
That
at
math
that
ain't
point, when we were
mathin'.
still in the living room, I shoved him back.
No,
But
that,
I can't. I
that
don't
math
really
ain't
recall too many specifics. I remember he threw a bottle at me. It missed me, but it broke the chandelier. And at some point, I remember maybe this was the shove that I was talking about. But at some point, Johnny and I are in a struggle in the living room, and kind of like shoves me down on the sofa, and I get up and I'm trying to get him off of me. And it's just stronger than me. I don't know how else to describe it. And at some point, he just whacks me in the face. And I had not, at the time, been like, I think that was the first time I was like, is this a broken nose? At the time, I was unsure what that feeling was, but I suspected I had a broken nose. And other than that, I was relatively unscathed. But I remember my nose being swollen, discolored, red. And I took a picture of my face at some point and made a joke about it to my friend about how bad I looked compared to how.
Objection, hearsay.
It was not for to prove the truth of the matter.
It's not sustained objection.
Okay. Okay. Just don't say what you told a friend. Okay. Okay. Let's take you to the Adderall Diaries. When did you start filming the Adderall Diaries?
Oh, that's a movie. Never heard of it.
May. I filmed another movie in New York, March, April, May. I went straight from that movie to another movie, an independent film with James Franco. The one I had previously shot was with Christopher Walken. That's right. Okay, so went from one to the other, and saw Johnny in these, in between. Like if I got a long weekend, or I'd fly home to be with him and then fly back. It was kind of like that.
Fly back from where? Where were you filming those?
In New York.
Okay. And where was Mr. Depp at that time?
Johnny was in LA at the time, and then eventually went on location for his movie Black Mass in Boston.
So you were in New York and Mr. Depp was in Boston at some point?
Eventually, by May 2014. That's it.
What is the deal with Sky News today? We might just have to leave Sky News behind. And we can't be having all that. We got enough technical difficulties on our own. we don't need them to be having technical difficulties too.
So tell the jury what Mr. Depp said.
He was mad at me for taking the job with James Franco.
Well, I had spoken to Johnny, he's in Boston, I'm in New York, and I spoke to him. He had already been upset with me and accused me in many arguments about not telling him about scenes that I had. If I had a kissing scene, any sort of romantic scene, and I wasn't explicit about what I was going to do, then I was accused of having withheld information and hiding it from him. So I didn't want the fight, of course. I didn't want the argument, but I had to kind of eggshell tiptoe around how to tell him when I had any sort of scene like that. And I did tell him in this occasion.
Objection, hearsay.
Okay, we need to stay with what Mr. Depp said, okay?
Okay, so he was upset with me, but he didn't sound coherent so much on the phone. He was yelling at me about how could you tell me this? How could you tell me this when I'm filming, when I have this scene that I'm doing? How could you tell me this when I'm working? Obviously, I couldn't tell him any other time because we were both filming, and I told him as soon as it was relevant, but he kept saying, how could you tell me this? How could you just tell me this? And it was like I had told him I was having an affair or something, he was that angry at me. But he kind of started to sound less connected to reality as these arguments would happen on the phone. This is in one day. Eventually, he hangs up on me in the conversation, screaming at me. I talked to his assistants. I won't say what they said, but I had conversations and felt encouraged that I could continue on with the plan, which was for me to get on the plane, go to Boston, pick him up, and we would go back to LA for his daughter's birthday. I was nervous because the conversation I had with him, and he was so upset with me on that conversation, but I figured I assumed he had passed out and that he would have been kind of sobered up the next day, assuming that the work would mean that he felt pressured to to kind of pull it together. And I get on the plane. He sent the plane, so I assumed he's not that mad at me. He's over it. We're moving on. He's sobered up. There had been a lot of talk about a sober plan, like a full detox, a full recovery, a doctor, a whole plan. There were talks of that following what had happened in London. So I was feeling like, okay, well, maybe we're here. And I get on the plane. It touches down and the SUV pulls up and it sits on the tarmac for a very long time. He knows I'm on the plane waiting for him.
She really did.
So I kind of started to anticipate that things weren't as I hoped, meaning that he was sober and had slept it off. And I'm sitting on the plane for a very long time waiting for him, and he finally opens the door and I see him get out of the SUV, and I can guess by how he's moving, how he's walking. I didn't realize at the time I had already become really sensitive to these little changes because my life changed depending on what he was on. And he gets on the plane, and I just knew in every cell of my body something was wrong. And he comes straight up to me, doesn't say anything to me, but is looking at me. He's got these glasses on and he takes them off in this kind of aggressive manner and sits down across from me, not in the usual spot. We kind of have our places on his plane, where you get used to sitting. And I remember I got up and moved to accommodate him getting by so he could sit in the normal seat as per usual. He didn't. He sat across from me. At some point, and I don't really remember the exact sequence of it, we take off, and at some point he's asking me what's wrong with me. What do I have? Do I have something to tell him? You want to talk to me about your day yesterday? And then it gets, I already know that he's drunk. I already know he's using, he reeks of weed and alcohol. I mean, his breath smelled so bad, and I could anticipate that there was a no-win situation here. There was no me talking myself out of this or talking him down or any, a lot of my arguments and my involvement in them are me trying to diffuse by explaining or
Objection, non-responsive.
She's telling the story.
I'll sustain an objection if that's part. Good. Okay.
So he is asking me questions, and I know to not engage. I was polite. I made sure to answer minimal amount of, the minimal amount that I could. I moved slowly. I was trying to be polite, but not engage because there was no win. And he kept going, kept asking me. Eventually he went from, do you have something to tell me, to, you want to tell me how much you liked it? Tell me, did he slip a tongue? It got worse and worse, just more. It went from asking me about how my kissing scene went or how the sex scene went to asking me what James Franco had done in the scene, to being really explicit about my body. He was talking about he was saying really disgusting things about my body, about how I liked it, how I responded. And then he started just straight up taunting me. I know you liked it. He called me a go-getter. He called me a slut in front. And also this is happening with security and his assistants on the plane. And I remember I felt, I struggle to be able to tell you how embarrassed I was, because he was speaking to me in front of people in this way, asking me if I liked it and if I was wet, and why I wasn't looking at him, and that was proof I wasn't looking at him. That was proof that I was asking for. Did I ask James to do this and this to me? And how about if he does those things to me? Insert sexually explicit descriptions of what he accused me of wanting or deserving. And I, at some point in this, get up and move to the front of the plane. And I remember getting up so slowly. I didn't want to aggravate him. I didn't want to give him any excuse to pounce on. I didn't want to upset him. I didn't want him to flip a switch and get worse. I just remember very slow movements. And I slowly get up and move to the front of the plane. And he starts throwing things at me. Ice cubes, utensils. He's calling me a go-getter, and then an embarrassment, talking about what an embarrassment I am. I don't know how many times I moved seats. I wish I did. I remember moving more than once, and Johnny came to me each time, not the other way around. He sits down in front of me at one point, and because I'm not answering him, I was looking out of the window, and he slaps my face. And his friend is in our proximity. And it didn't hurt my face. It just felt embarrassed. Did you do that to me in front of people? It was the first time that anything like that had happened in front of somebody.
Why does she keep saying when he hits her, it didn't hurt?
I got up to move again, and he's just taunting me, having a laugh, screaming, and then just straight up mean, calling me names. And it was oscillating between those things. And I get up slowly again, and I just resolve to just sit the rest of the time up at the front of the plane. And as I get up, he kind of kicks the swivel chair into my hip, or kind of just hits me. And I look at him, and he asks me, what are you going to do about it? I just stared at him. I just stared at him and wanted him to see me. I wanted to get through to him. Didn't feel there was it felt like there was a blackness in his eyes. I wanted to look at him. I wanted him to see me. It didn't even feel like him. And as I'm walking away, slowly trying not to be, I was being very deliberate about my movements, wasn't saying anything, I wasn't engaging. I am walking away from him slowly, and he tells me to hurry the fuck up. Hurry up. And I just look at him one more time, wanting to penetrate the monster to see the man that I love underneath that. The man I loved. And he tells me to hurry up again.
You can look all day, but he ain't looking back.
And I pull my gaze away from him. I walk away from him. My back is turned to him, and I feel this boot in my back. He just kicked me in the back. I fell to the floor. I caught myself on the floor, and I just felt like I was looking at the floor of the plane felt like a long time. And I thought to myself, I don't know what to do. I can't believe he just kicked me. No one said anything. No one did anything. It was like you could hear a pin drop on that plane. You could feel the tension, but no one did anything.
Sounds exactly like the exact
And
testimony
I
she
just
gave
remember
yesterday.
feeling so embarrassed.
The dog in the car incident.
I felt so embarrassed that he could kick me to the ground in front of people. And more embarrassing, I didn't know what to do about it. I got up and I walked to the front of the plane. I sat down and I just looked out of the window. And Jerry Judge's security and my friend both kind of under their breath asked me, "Are you okay?"
Objection, hearsay.
I spent the rest of the time looking out of the window.
Sustain the objection.
And
Did there come a time that you tape recorded Mr. Depp on this plane?
I want to sit here and say that I was like, I was telling myself I needed to leave him. But as he got worse, he demanded the oxygen tank from the flight attendant, excuse me. And he continued to drink and then eventually started howling like an animal and passed out in the bathroom
Okay, Joey.
with the door locked. And was howling. And I at some point pushed record on my phone because there was that 5% part of me.
Objection, non-responsive.
I don't think it's non-responsive. She's explaining what led up to her tape recording and why. I mean, I'll just, I mean, I can ask her,
Okay.
well, that's all, but
All right.
why
Are we
did
talking
you
about the
tape record him?
tape recorder where he was in withdrawal?
Because I knew that Johnny wouldn't remember what he had done. I knew he would not remember. And if
Calls for speculation.
She can say why she did it and what she thought.
But that last part called for speculation. I'll sustain the
Don't
objection.
say, I knew. Why did you tape record?
in my experience, when Johnny was that inebriated, he would not remember what he had done.
Calls for speculation.
How can that call for speculation?
I'll sustain the objection.
All right, let's go to defendants 221. And I'm going to play 3 different parts for it.
Your Honor, may we approach, please?
Okay, y'all are asking in the comment section about what objection non-responsive is. The non-responsive objection is when the witness is not responding properly to the question being asked. Like they're giving a responsive answer, but it's a non-responsive answer to the question. I'm trying to make this make sense in the simplest form and fashion. Basically non-responsive, she's not answering the question. Also, are we going to talk about how that was the exact same testimony she gave with the car yesterday? Exactly. Here's my thing, yesterday she mentioned the flight attendant that he allegedly, supposedly, I don't know shit about fuck, assaulted, but where's the flight attendant? Does she exist? Is this true? There would be proof of this, like
So we're
things
going
like
to start
that.
with 221.
Or
And we're going
verifiable.
to call it A, and that'll be 0 through 1 minute.
Okay, sure.
This is a private sidebar between legal, and they're talking about legal things. Like, they don't want the jury to hear it. It will be in the transcript, but they're just basically having a sidebar to discuss legal elements of what's going on. Also notice when she tried to look directly at Johnny. Most people, when they're angry and finally confronting their abuser, everyone's different, right? But a lot of the times you'll see them
With the first
staring
one
them
with 0
down.
to 1 minute. And can you turn up the volume just, I mean, there's part of it that the noise of the airplane is a little
Her
bit
body language is
loud, but
interesting, and who she chooses
to be
to
able to
look
pick
at
up
when
the
she says
noise.
what. So it is the withdrawal disorder. Okay, this, I'm pausing it because we've heard this before, but if she's supposed to be showing him being abusive, all I'm hearing is a man in withdrawal.
30 seconds.
And if I remember correctly, she is the reason he went into withdrawal because if my memory does not fail me, he said that he asked her for his dose and she said it wasn't time yet and didn't give it to him, if I remember correctly.
They'll torture the jury if they do that, you're right. 9:30 to 10, just 30 seconds more.
Take this for Canadian use and get sick.
All right. And you're gonna be changing gears after that, or do you have more questions for this issue?
No, I think this should be fine
Okay,
for a break.
all right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our morning break then. Just do not do any outside research and don't discuss the case with anybody.
Big facts.
All right, thank you. And again, ma'am, since you're still testifying, don't discuss your testimony with anybody at this point, okay? All right, so let's just come back at, let's make it 11:42. All right, 11:42.
Thank you, Ellen.
Yeah, if memory is not failing me, which it could be because y'all know I'm on the struggle bus this morning, I believe that recording was him in withdrawal, which she caused because he asked for his medication and she said it wasn't time yet, if I'm remembering correctly. I know I was disgusted with this audio because I'm like, if he's in withdrawal and it's that bad, why are you not trying to assist him or call for help or maybe give him the dose because he's obviously not bullshitting, but instead you record him clearly in agonizing withdrawal. And if you know somebody who's been an addict, is an addict, lost their battle to addiction, we all know someone, then you know. If you know, you know. Also, let me remind y'all that this is Virginia and the opioid epidemic. Virginia and West Virginia play a strong role in that, in the history of that. Some of the comments are saying that was from the Bahamas. So maybe I'm have the wrong flight. But if the withdrawal audio is from a different time, I don't know why they'd be playing it right now. Okay, we're all clearly remembering it at a different time when she denied the meds. I don't know. I don't know what day it was. I thought that's what this recording was of. I agree with that. Great question. I wonder if that's one of the pictures I have of her injuries. Let's see. I think this is from the James Corden show, the picture I have. Am I crazy? Is this recording not him in withdrawal? I know he went to Detox on the Island, that's for sure. For some reason, and of course we're on week 4, I thought that recording was him in withdrawal, or maybe I just associated. I was like, obviously that man's in withdrawal in that recording. I could very well be wrong. I'm not the person that pretends to be right all the time or knows everything. I sure as fuck do not. Clearly, I'm going to have to check for when this audio was. Okay, prenup, postnup. Okay. A prenup is before you get married to someone, you can sign a prenup, which means that all of the assets that you had before this marriage and all of the other person's assets before they had before the marriage, if y'all get divorced, those assets are protected. They're covered. A postnup is after you get married, asking someone to sign paperwork saying that. Basically, when you get married, obviously there's marital assets. You get divorced, things get split. A prenup just means before the marriage. Postnup just means after the marriage, but it's to protect your assets, your money, your things, should you get divorced. And I believe he asked her to sign a postnup. I don't know why he would not have done a prenup, but I digress. Like, why was that necessary to throw dad under the bus like that? I mean, she's thrown everybody under the bus, rolled their ass over, backed up, then ran them over again, drug them 10 miles, and never looked back at this point. I mean, she's thrown everyone but herself under the bus. Okay. So let me pull this up. One second. Let me get my paperwork. Here. Okay. So yesterday, y'all heard her say that she did not do cocaine. To be fair, she said at the time. That matters because she said at the time. But I just want to point out that she did this clip, and I can play it for y'all.
And I'm the nag. So eventually I called my sister. He had kind of a buddy relationship with her at the time. And at the time, she occasionally did cocaine. I didn't, but she did.
Okay. So she says at the time. Just keep that in mind. But I would like to just remind everyone that if we look at, and I won't bother putting the papers up because I know y'all can't see them very well, but from a transcript, it says, the question is, in general, what drugs does Miss Heard use so to the extent that you know? The witness, mushrooms, LSD, cocaine, and ecstasy. Then we move on to nurse's notes from the doctor. And it says, Amber Heard reports history of substance abuse, including an addiction to cocaine and liquor. So there's that. Then on TikTok, what else did we discuss? Oh, I had mentioned previously that someone said that they had discussed their sexual assault story with Amber Heard, and they alleged that she basically stole their story. And I had talked about this on TikTok, but y'all know I like to have paperwork. So I was trying to dig through the paperwork and find it. Well, last night I found it. And it says, Mr. Shreeborn, that's who's saying this. This is the last question I am going to ask you about this. In paragraph 7 of your witness statement, just summarizing, you say this. As I perused the documents, much to my utter shock and dismay, I discovered that Miss Heard had stolen my sexual violence conversation with her and twisted it in her own story to benefit her. Answer, correct. So someone is alleging that they confided in her their sexual assault story and that, and I quote, I discovered that Miss Heard had stolen my sexual violence conversations with her and twisted it into her own story to benefit herself. So there's that. Then also on TikTok, see here, and shout out to the shithead that sent this in to me last night on Instagram. Let me find it. right here. Okay, pull this up for y'all. And this I will share. Okay, so zoom in here. I know quality's not that great. I'm sorry. So these are two pictures from two different angles. And if you notice in the, I'm going to hide this part because y'all know I'm talking about what I talked about late night on TikTok. If you look right here, you can see that the box is right here. But then in this image, the box is not. Also, this glass is frosted, so it could not have been left out from the night before because it has condensation. I mean, clearly there's condensation on that glass, so clearly that's a fresh glass. Also, this mug might look familiar to some of y'all because I believe that is the same mug that Amber tried to hide her phone with in the infamous kitchen video that she recorded. So, also, this was on late night TikTok. So I do late night TikTok because y'all come here and remind me of these things in the morning. Also, a shithead sent in her mugshot. So all the credit to the shitheads that sent this in on Instagram last night. They sent in her mugshot. Let me get it. Right hither. Okay. So if we look at this, you can see the date right here. Right? Okay. Here's the mugshot. Now, if you remember yesterday, she talked about how she did volunteer work at the soup kitchen and with the hearing impaired. And I'm wondering if that community service was possibly a mandatory thing called community service, as in like mandatory community service, as in like I got in trouble and have to do community service. I do not know. Okay, I do not know. I'm just saying, you look at this, you look at the time, that would make her around
Save
16.
half to me, send half to my family.
Ooh. What was that? Anyways, I don't know, but the hell? What in the hell? Okay, anyways, I don't know, but it makes you wonder if it was community service. So she would have been a juvenile, and juvenile records are sealed. Oh. I will do that. I will do that. Yeah, you want to drop it down for us? Oh, imagine that. Imagine that. I had some more tea on Instagram, so hold on. Anyways, yeah, that volunteering might have been community service. I don't know though. Obviously, juvenile records are sealed, but allegedly, supposedly, I don't know shit about fuck. That's just some fruit for thought. I do think it's interesting that the picture from different angles, like the box is there, the box is not. There's condensation on the cup, so clearly that's freshly poured. I don't know people that space out lines of recreationally used items and leave them out overnight, but I digress. Allegedly, supposedly. Allegedly, supposedly.
All right, we ready for the jury then?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Always allegedly, supposedly. We know nothing. The internet is undefeated, especially with this crew. Yeah, she did say that, but condensation on the cup all night? Oh, I did see the
Thank you.
deposition videos.
See,
Yes.
next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Amber, following the plane ride, what did you do once you landed in LA?
I called for a car to pick me up, met me at the private airport, and I left. I got straight off the plane as soon as we touched down. Johnny had been saying what he would do to me once we got on the ground, and I didn't know how long this cycle would last, so I wanted to just get out of there. I went to a hotel and called my friends to join me, which was my coping
Right.
strategy at the time.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take a look at defendants 204. Did you reach out to?
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay and leading.
Your Honor, I would direct Your Honor's attention to the first one in blue and the third one in blue, and I would say present sense impression and the state of mind at that time.
Right, your approach.
Yes.
Yeah, somebody copy and paste exactly what he said from the article for us. Great point. I don't know when they'll do, I mean, obviously they're going to do cross when they finish direct, right? But you have to keep in mind, they kept Johnny up for direct for 2 days, right? How many days was Johnny up there total? Almost 4? So they could do direct all day. They could allow a little cross to start. They might not want to do cross until after the break. You just never know. No, they're just doing their job. There's always, that happens frequently. That's normal. $4 days, yeah. So I would not be surprised at all to see her on direct all day today. But we just don't know.
All right, let's go to 205.
Here's the quote y'all were
Defendant's
asking for.
205.
Thank you, Shannon.
And this is a communication between you and Rocky Pennington, your best friend, is that correct?
That's correct.
Objection, hearsay.
I'm gonna just leave this quote up for a minute because it's kind of the liar's walk of shame here if he's telling the truth. Y'all, she does not have an earpiece in. Whoever said that, shame on them. They scan you like TSA when you go in here. Like they make sure you don't have any electronics you're not supposed to have. They take your lighters away. You get checked when you go into a courthouse, and no, she does not have an earpiece in. That's absolute insanity. So this is a quote that apparently Kevin Costner said. Let me find, y'all have commented a bunch now. I believe that Kevin Costner, right? But this is a comment that he said. Now, if you remember yesterday, she testified that she was wearing a robe on set and he kicked up the back of her robe and shoved her down on the bed and all of these things. And then allegedly, supposedly, Kevin Costner came out and said this, which, if true, contradicts what she testified to yesterday on the stand. So,
So 205, the redactions is in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we publish to the jury? Thank you.
It is.
So Rocky on this is Rocky Pennington, your best friend, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And when did you send this communication to Rocky?
Once I had touchdown in LA.
And you said, I'm not good. What did you mean by that?
2 different times. Ignore
That
me.
I
2
needed
different
help.
times.
That I was scared. I was scared of what had just happened to me. I was scared of what was going to happen to me. I was scared if I left him. I was scared if I didn't. And I needed help. I just needed support.
Okay, so it's not the same
feel
time
sick
as what she
going home. I
testified
still
to
had my place
yesterday.
in
It's a
Orange,
different
in
movie
Keys.
entirely from later on, right? Am I clarifying right? I thought you were saying it was the
scared.
same movie that she testified to yesterday.
Did you text your mother and your father about this incident?
Objection, hearsay.
If you want to,
What if any communication did you have with your
Okay.
mother or your father following this incident?
Objection, hearsay.
I thought y'all were saying the movie she testified to yesterday.
Let's go to defendants.
He said that about that.
222.
2 different situations. Sorry for the confusion. That's my bad. I thought
suspect
we're talking about one and the
you
same.
want to keep on approach, that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, they're approaching. Again, my bad. I thought y'all were talking about him saying that for the movie that she testified about yesterday. But it is 2 different times. Apparently, Rocky used to be her best friend, and then she slapped Rocky, according to testimony from others, and they're no longer friends now. Y'all know I have not had very much coffee today. Y'all saw my rough start this morning. I've been checking back and forth with Sky to see if they're showing the documents. So if they show the documents, I'll switch over. I'm hella confused. Okay. So
What if
he
any
wasn't saying that about what she testified
communications
to
did you have
He's
with
saying
Kate
that
James following the Boston
years later
plane
about him
incident?
and her.
Objection, hearsay.
We'll have to talk about this
Your
on
Honor,
board.
if we go to 224,
Okay. 224.
my argument would be business records exception.
All right, you want to come forward and do it?
Okay, y'all got to remember I only catch certain comments. Let's see if we can get on the same page. Y'all dropped the Kevin Costner tea. I'm thinking it's in relation to the testimony she gave yesterday, but it's not in relation to the testimony that she gave yesterday. Kevin Costner is saying that about a different movie years later, and he is saying that she found her way into his trailer naked when she broke up with Johnny for a few days. Are we on the same page now? Do I have the T right? So it has absolutely nothing to do with yesterday's testimony about onset. It's something entirely different. I am from Arkansas. My apologies. I try not to let that slip. I try to use my pronounce things appropriately. But I slip and you guys can hear what I really sound like. Okay, so we're on the same page. Y'all know I'm on the struggle bus this morning. I was a little confused. For some reason, I thought we were talking about yesterday's testimony. It makes sense now.
So what if anything
So you
did
understand.
you do
Okay,
the
good.
evening of the 24th of May?
I reached out to friends and family, asked for support,
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
and surrounded myself with them with that.
What if anything did you do for Lily Rose's birthday?
That's why we had gone back to LA. Johnny was sick after having passed out on the plane. So I took her to dinner. We went to Benihana's. It was, again, put on my smile, took her out, tried to make her feel loved, and celebrated for her birthday. And then I booked a flight out to New York to go back to New York, obviously without Johnny.
I'm going to ask you to now turn to 225. And you're going to be referring to the last two blue spots on that page with the state of mind. Mental condition.
It doesn't, it's still hearsay, Your Honor. May we approach?
I mean, people testified that he would literally put in his contracts he could not miss their birthdays. there were so many people that testified way in contradiction to this. Also, you know, bringing his kids into it, like, is that really necessary? Is it really necessary? She's looking to her right because she's looking at the jury. She is keeping her eyes on that jury. Benihana's, I laughed too.
I'm going to ask you to turn now to 228.
Your Honor, we're going to object on hearsay.
First line, Your Honor,
Okay.
is all I understand in Your Honor's ruling, but I think
Like, she does know that Lily Rose, like, has thrown shade on social media, right? But I guess she forgot we heard all these audios too, so I digress. I'm so glad to see that there's so many people that understand, that just understand it. If you don't sound Southern, I wouldn't want it. Love you for that. It was just funny because, you know, I started, like, I have my private Arkansas Crime News reporting, but the podcast, I started it in November, and YouTube and TikTok are as a result of the podcast. And I always try to pronunciate because it's a podcast. It's, you just hear nothing but talking. And so I would try to talk as best as I could. And then people would say, "Oh, I love your Southern accent." I was like, what? I was unaware. I mean, of course, yeah, I'm from Arkansas. I realize I have a Southern accent, but it was just funny to hear people be like, "I just love the way you talk. I just love that you sound Southern."
so. Tell us please tell the jury
I'm
what you
glad.
did then over that night, the next day, and at the hotel.
I cried a lot. So I just found myself with my friends and resolved to leave him. I felt
If they're angry
powerless.
enough, they will.
Nothing I did made a difference. You know, on the plane, I was so careful.
Objection, non-responsive.
Please just tell us what you did, and you can tell how you feel, but don't go backwards, okay?
I resolved, tried to, the strength to commit to leaving him. I knew I had to. I knew nothing else would make a difference. So I got myself back to LA. New York. And started going to Al-Anon meetings every day. It's a support group for people who love addicts and alcoholics.
What, if any, communications did you have with Stephen Duders?
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, let me ask it this way. What, if any, communications did you have with Mr. Duders communicating on behalf of Mr. Depp?
Objection, hearsay.
I'd say agency on that, Your Honor.
You have to lay a foundation for that.
All right, let's go to 229A.
Love to see it.
And could you, without saying what the content is, can you tell us who this text message is with?
Johnny's assistants.
What's his name?
His name is Stephen Duders.
And what, if any, communication were you having with him following the Boston plane incident?
Objection, hearsay. May we approach?
All right.
I'm loving that she is calling it out. And not only that, she wants to approach because she wants to really discuss some issues of what's going on. I think she stays annoyed. She very well might be. Honestly, I'm kind of hoping that she's the one that does cross with Amber. That's what I'm hoping. She's still staring at the jury over there. These Harry Potter fans, I'm a huge Potterhead, so this shit's so funny to me. We've been calling her Amica Umbridge all week. And the fact that you think Umbridge is a horrid person, but please don't drag her by comparing her to... that's hilarious. Hilarious. That's a new low, actually. Oh my God, I love this. I have a pet turtle named Severus, but yours is way cooler. Way cooler. I think we might have just became besties over that. They're probably more boring than you think most of the time. Mm-hmm.
Did you communicate at all with Mr. Depp in the days following the Boston plane incident?
Yes, I did.
Please tell the jury about those communications.
I heard from him directly. I also heard from him through his assistants who were texting for him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
You're not allowed to testify about the text messages with his assistant, but can you tell the jury about your communications with Mr. Depp?
Okay.
it's kind of confusing because he was texting through them.
Objection, Your
I'll
Honor.
sustain the objection. I'll strike that from the record and just regard that testimony. Please answer the question.
Just confine it to the communications you had with Mr. Depp, please.
That he was sorry and told me that he was in a blackout. He didn't remember everything, but what he did remember, he was ashamed of. He begged me to forgive him, said he understood and forgave me if I never wanted to speak to him again. He
I
texted
love
me at one
this so
point
much. Amazing.
and then I didn't respond right away. And he texted me again that he understood
That's the
that I had made
courtroom.
my decision to move on and good luck and I was better for it and then continued to contact me. I spoke to him when I was in New York on the phone and he said that he was he had a chip or that he was going to meetings.
I promise y'all, I have
I think
Sky
at the
News
time
pulled up on the
Sharon
right,
was
and
sober,
if they show
another
something, I'll
celebrity
switch
that was
for
kind
us.
of advising him on sobriety, or not advising him, but encouraging him. And he was saying, well, look, me and this person, we even went to a meeting. I've got 3 days sober, 4 days sober, and that was the last time. The monster will never come back. Monster will never come back. And because it felt like it felt so much worse than it had ever been before. And because I had, I went to New York and I was trying to get my strength to leave him, I actually thought that it kind of would be the turning point. I thought I had effectively...
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled.
Thank you. Go ahead, please continue.
I thought things would change.
Did you draft any kind of email to Mr. Depp to express your emotions and how you felt about all this?
Objection, hearsay.
Well, let's go, I'll lay the
Okay.
foundation, Your Honor. Let's go to defendants 239.
239.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
And I would say both present sense impression and definitely state of mind, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right. So did you ultimately communicate to Mr. Depp what you first drafted up in an email without saying anything about what's in the email?
That calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
I'm just asking if she did.
No, what she said.
Correct.
Okay. Overruled.
Did you communicate to Mr. Depp what you had drafted in the email? And you don't get to say what you said.
Yes.
Okay. And what, if any, response did Mr. Depp have to your sending that email to him?
He came to New York to fight for the relationship, for me, to prove that he was sober and he was committed to changing.
Bingo card. Mark that lip quiver off.
I believed he was embarrassed and sorry. He said he was, and I believed him. So I took him back, or I got back with him on the condition that he would uphold his promise to do the treatment, to do the full detox, clean up, and never go back.
So I'm going to take you now up to the June through August 2014 timeframe. And I think you testified earlier, and others have as well, that Mr. Depp brought in Dr. Kipper and his group, correct?
Yes, he did.
Could you please describe for the jury what those next few months were like?
All of a sudden, this doctor gets brought on that we had been talking about. I'd heard this name before. And all of a sudden, this doctor, Dr. Kipper, apparently wrote a book on addiction and was this doctor was going to be the solution, the cure, and he got brought on board, and all of a sudden the plan was that this team would be involved in Johnny's recovery. So it felt real, felt serious. I felt like protected. I'd already by this point heard a million times, it seems like, promises to get clean and sober, but this felt like a change. And they were going to come to Boston and start working with Johnny. And the plan was to keep Johnny on the same level of drugs that he was on since he was filming. They needed him to finish filming the movie, so he was going to be maintained with his with prescription pills, including the painkillers. And the plan was he would obviously abstain from alcohol completely and all other drugs like weed and coke. And then when he finished filming, the plan was to do the
Objection,
full
Your Honor,
detox.
hearsay. And lack of foundation.
I don't understand what the objection, I don't think
Of
it is.
course
I
you
think she was
don't.
just explaining the context there. I don't think she was saying.
But we
what
could
somebody
lay a
said.
foundation how she knew. It's fine.
How did you know that?
I was involved in the conversations
Please
with the doctors and with his sister.
Objection, Your
And-
Honor, that's still hearsay.
All right, I'll
Okay,
sustain the
that is-
objection.
That part is. So what happened next? As a result of these communications, without saying what the communications were?
A nurse came to Boston, where Johnny was. I just would come for short periods of time.
I whispered,
in
of course you
between,
don't, under my
on
breath. That was
weekends
me. I'm so
filming until I wrapped my movie, which I did.
That was me under my breath.
I think in May, if I am not mistaken. And then I went to Boston and I was there and saw him.
That was me under
the
my
nurse
breath. I'm
was
sorry. That's
Flown
funny.
out to Boston, Debbie Lloyd, and I believe Kipper came out too. And they put Johnny on a bunch of new medications, which they shared with me, told me about.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
That's so
You
funny.
have to be careful about what other people told you. Okay, so but you can testify to what you know, okay? So.
Me under my breath, just causing problems. Sorry.
I saw his medications change. I know the amount
Oh.
that Johnny told them he was on was so that they could maintain him for the filming, meaning
Sorry,
not
guys.
make a drastic change in the amount of painkillers
My
he was
salty
taking.
under my breath comments,
But
getting people confused.
His behavior, his whole personality changed drastically. He would be speaking to me, and at the time I was staying in Boston with him, having wrapped my movie, and he would, in mid sentence, mid word, fall asleep. One time I was sitting across from him, and he would come in and out of sleep, of being awake, or
Maybe I need to whisper more
completely
things under my
what
breath,
appeared to
really
be
get y'all
asleep, while
confused.
talking to me, and he had a cigarette in his hand, and Johnny constantly smoked, and he just set the cigarette, as he fell asleep while speaking, down on his leg. They're hand rolled cigarettes; they don't stay lit very
They can't
long,
back down now,
thankfully,
y'all.
But he it was things like that, and I didn't understand it, even though I had experience
Sorry, I'm allergic to the bullshit. Had a
drug
sneeze
use
there.
in my family. I hadn't seen anything like this, and it was so dramatic, the change, that I was trying to figure out with the nurses and doctors what happened, what changed, how we could explain the change and what medications were causing it. I knew there were new medications involved, so I was constantly worried and in communication. And Johnny's behavior got worse and worse, more of this passing out, nodding off, waking up in the middle of the night, screaming, waking up in the middle of the night, sometimes crying.
We had this debate the other
and
day.
The emotions would change from one to the next, like by the second. I remember we were on a long weekend when he was filming in Boston, and we went to this like a resort retreat hotel, and he was just bawling. It broke my heart. There was just a lot of changes, and I really didn't know. I felt so bad for him, and I thought maybe it was just what Kipper had introduced into the regime, the medications. But what I found out in that time is that he was taking about double the amount.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Is
No,
this your
I
observation?
saw it.
Okay, overruled.
Thank you. Please continue.
It was taking about double the amount that he told them was his normal when he started the process with the doctors. So after a few, it's, I think, months of going, what is wrong? And, turning him over when he vomited at night or checking his pulse, there were, all of a sudden when I realized the amount was about double, I realized then he had been lying to them and me about the amounts so that he could get extra high before he had a detox. But that I can't just, that I was so, it was such an agonizing weeks, months. It was so agonizing. I don't know how long it lasted, but I was so concerned for this person, and he had just been doubling up his meds because he didn't.
So, Michelle, can you pull up 1092, Defendant's Exhibit 1092?
I'm not going to say this out loud in the video, but I'll put it on chat.
Amber, did you take this picture of Mr. Depp?
That's what
I
I'm getting
did.
in my head right
So
now.
I'm going to move the admission of Defendant's Exhibit 1092.
All right, any objection?
No objection.
All right, 1092 on evidence. You can publish. Thank you.
Can you describe what's depicted here and why you took this picture?
This was during that time when the prescriptions that he was on in the doubling up of the opiates got so bad that he was like this just throughout the day, off and on, and then he would take Adderall and he'd be really
Now
animated,
you won't be able to
ready go,
unhear
and
it the
would
rest
be
of the time, just like I
this
can't hear
again,
it.
and it was so erratic and so
Oh shit,
changed
hold
so
up.
quickly, and I
Damn it,
naively
never mind.
now
They were showing a
really did
picture of
not
him passed
understand
out
what was going
on.
I deeply cared about this human's well-being,
All right.
and it was very confusing and scary.
So did there come a time then that Mr. Depp went into detox for oxycodone or whatever they're called?
Yes, when he finished filming, the plan was to do the detox, and that's what we did.
And when was that?
That would have been early August of 2014. I believe we left. We were there for, I think, a week to 10 days, 8 through the 18th, more or less.
And we've heard some testimony about this, but can you please describe for the jury what took place during this detox on the Bahama Islands in August 2014?
It was, for the first few days, okay, peaceful. The nurse, and then later nurse and doctor,
we're staying on a different part of the island. A few minutes drive by ATV, like 10, 15 minute, by one of those ATV vehicles. But we communicated via walkie-talkie and occasionally through text. And it was okay at first. And then the behavior, then it just really wasn't okay. It was up, down, he'd be mad at me. Then he was wanting a hug. He cried a lot, and then he wanted to have sex a lot, which is just not like Johnny at all. And it was just like that. It was just up, down, mood, and it was like I felt like I constantly was catering to the mood, that whatever he was going through at the time. I was just trying to adapt and kind of roll with it and provide support. I was taking his blood pressure.
Roxy
I was
is the
on a schedule
nickname
and constant
for
communication with the nurses about
Oxycontin. They
delivering
call
the
it
meds, getting
Roxy.
his meds at a certain time. I was just trying to take care of him, and a few days in, I guess the effects of the detox really started to change, and it went from this like erratic behavior up and down to just really down or mad. He bursts into anger at me, yelling at me. I crossed the table. I walked away from it at the table. I crossed the table in a certain way. He screamed at me about that and tried to overturn this table. Luckily, it was bolted down to the deck. But I remember him shaking it and screaming. And at a different point, he was really calm and sweet and thanking me. And then another, he looked like he was balancing out, and we had a conversation, and he was saying he wanted to quit the detox, and he couldn't do it anymore. And I was trying to find the language to encourage him. I was trying to remind him how much he wanted that, how much he had told me he wanted that, how much it was reminding him. He told me all the time, I saved his life, and he wouldn't be doing this without me. And I was telling him these things, and I was, at one point in our conversations, I told him about how—
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Please try to continue without what you said, please.
I said something to him, and he got so angry at me, he slapped me across the face. But he did it while crying. It was the weirdest thing. Just crying, saying no woman had ever embarrassed him like that. No woman had ever made him feel like that. I heard that for the rest of the trip too, just on repeat. And I felt bad. I feel bad. Still feel bad. But didn't want to make him feel embarrassed. That's not what I wanted to do. It just was in over my head. I don't know how to detox someone. I don't know how to help them through that. And I shouldn't have been there. I don't.
Why were you there?
Because he asked me to. And I didn't know that was a phenomenally dumb idea. I don't know why why the doctors and nurses didn't tell me not to. I had no idea what that was going to look like or be like. And it was hell. We're on an island. I'm trying to take care of him, and he was hallucinating and—
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled.
Screaming at me for things that I said when I didn't say any. I hadn't said anything. I would tell him, Johnny,
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Well, I think in the context, Your Honor, it's not offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
What's it for?
It's just telling the context of
Sustain the objection.
Please continue and just say what he says and what he did and what your observations were.
he was accusing me of having a man in the house with me. We were in a single, in a cabin. It's basically one room with a closet and a bathroom. I mean, there's nowhere to hide, really. I mean, there's a closet and a bathroom. And he, at one point, told me that I was hiding somebody in the house. Another point, he was communicating with someone not in the room. It would yell at me and then yell at someone else who wasn't there. And I tried to
ask for what I should do. I didn't know what to do. It was terrifying and strange. The whole week was.
So after you left Bahamas and finished with the detox there, where did you go from there?
We, meaning Debbie Lloyd, Dr. Kipper, and I and Johnny, we flew back to LA. And he was going back and forth between saying he wasn't going to continue to, he was committed. It was back and forth. Everything was up, down, erratic, like changing every second. And we got to LA, and Debbie and Kipper communicated with me. I won't say what they said, but I decided it would be probably in everyone's best interest if I went away to a hotel. Johnny put me up in this room in this hotel while he finished the process of detox in LA. And I had my friends out with my girlfriends there to support me as per usual.
So Michelle, can you pull up 272, please? And after you both returned to LA, did Mr. Depp communicate with you by text while you were apart, while he was finishing the detox?
Yes, he did.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of 272.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to the first message. Excuse me, Your Honor, to the second.
Right.
It's just present sense impression, but I'm understanding Your Honor's rulings on that. So can we redact that second message? All right, Your Honor,
All right. Any objections? 272 redacted.
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right. 272 is in evidence and published.
And Amber, I'm going to show you now what is Defendant's Exhibit 272, and this is on August 20, 2014. It's a text message from Mr. Depp to you. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And just so that we can highlight here, he's calling you. He says, just to let you know that I'm fine, my angel. I miss you, of course, but this was the right thing to do to speed up the process. I love you more than life. Yours, Steve. You see that?
I do.
So what, if any, expressions was Mr. Depp giving you at this point that he was angry with you ever having to help participate with the detox or to be on the island or anything along that line?
Objection, form, compound.
I'll allow it, but just for trying to keep the record clear, 272 has already been entered into evidence without that redactions, and there wasn't any objection. So I would wish if I could have both sides to keep track of their evidence. It's not my job to keep this.
Thank you, Your Honor. And I just got a note to that effect. So
Okay, so 272 is in evidence without even clear the redaction and publish it. It's really the party's responsibility to take care of the record, not mine.
my apologies, Your Honor. All right.
All right, and I overruled the objection, so she can answer the question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, can you remind me what the question was?
Yes,
That's fair.
That's fair. What, if anything, did Mr. Depp say about that you were torturing him on the island and he didn't want you there?
Very confusing for me to hear that, because even though he was hallucinating and angry at me at various moments, we would have these kind of episodes. I did nothing but try to take care of him. I'm not a nurse. I did my best to support him. And he thanked me. He thanked my mom. He thanked my dad. And told me, of course, I saved his life. That he would be able to make this change without me. And that this process was horrible and hard on him and us and me. But that he was so thankful that I was there for him.
Okay, we can take this down now, Michelle, thank you. And I'm going to take you up to September, October of 2014. Do you remember filming Magic Mike 2 in that time frame?
Yes, I do.
And what, if any, connections did you have with Mr. Depp in that time frame?
Well, I bargained with him about me doing the role. He told me he would call the actors. It was a mostly male cast, but I bargained with him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Don't say what you said, just say what he said, okay?
He reluctantly kind of agreed to me working on this movie or taking a job. He was filming a different movie in London at the time. I wasn't going to play a sexualized character. I wore no makeup or minimal makeup in the movie. No sexy clothing. No kissing scenes. No sex scenes. So I went and did that film in October of 2014 in Georgia, while he finished his movie in London. And then at some point he came out to pick me up in Georgia and was there for my last day or two of filming.
I'm going to ask you to turn to, Michelle, can you bring up 310, please? Defendants 310. Did you have communications with Mr. Depp about auditioning for another role in this time frame?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to object to the exhibit as hearsay.
I'm not sure who's in the text exchange.
It is text exchange, Your Honor, so, but the green is Mr. Depp. And the one I'm most focused on is on the second page, Your Honor, the top.
The green bubble on the second page?
Yes.
All right, so just that text.
Based on Your Honor's rulings, yes.
Any objection to that text?
No, thank you, Your
Okay,
Honor.
if we can get that redacted.
And while that's being redacted, and let me ask you, what, if any, anything was Mr. Depp saying to you in this time frame? We're talking November 2014, about you not working anymore or not taking on any more work or auditioning.
Objection, Your Honor, compound.
They're all the
I'm
same
reading.
subset.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Johnny was angry with me for working. I had finished my job and I needed to eventually find another job, meaning a movie, to work on. And he was furious at me for, he found we call them sides. They're just pieces of an audition, pages. And he found something that had been sent to me to consider auditioning for And he blew up at me for, yeah, I think what he said to me is that I didn't tell him, that I didn't ask him, and that because he didn't know about that audition that I hadn't done yet, that I had been hiding it, and was furious at me. I ended up not doing that audition, I believe. Well, there was a few, one or two in that time that I did I did audition for, and one or two that I didn't.
I'm going to ask you now to take a look at what is Defendant's Exhibit 310. Do you recognize this email from Mr. Depp?
Yes, it's a text.
Your Honor, I'm going to move for the admission.
It's in the 310.
Oh, okay.
It's in redactions, so.
Please tell the jury about this text and the context.
This was Johnny's response to me apologizing for having an audition.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to stay in November of 2014. And did there come a time that Mr. Depp told you that he understood that you were not going to accept any more jobs, that you were going to stop working?
Well, Johnny said this to me in an argument, in a fit of rage. It's the best way I can describe it, and kind of alluded to me having agreed to not work anymore, which if you don't know me, is preposterous. There's no way I would agree to that. Although I did make concessions and gave up a lot of
Objection, Your Honor,
fights.
hearsay.
That wasn't overruled. Thank you. Please continue.
So he reached out to other people and to me to that effect, furious at me for taking meetings. There was one in particular I wanted, one meeting I wanted to take because it was a project in development with a sci-fi writer. And I remember I wanted to take that. These things were just, they were just constant fights. But in between them, when things were good between Johnny and I, he would be, he would word it to me like, I'm trying to look out for you. You say that you don't want to be objectified. You're doing it to yourself, but at first it was because I dressed a certain way or had sex scenes, and then it just got more narrow and more narrow and more narrow what I could do without being the blame for why the industry, Hollywood, the entertainment industry was putting me in a box and objectifying me. So it became my fault. I mean, I believed it. I believed it. I adopted a lot of these changes myself, not because Johnny, said you have to do it this way, but because of all the other things that he said and did, I eventually found myself making decisions about my own career, about how I dressed, about how I wore my hair, how I presented, where my eyes were cast when I walked into a room. And I believe those were my own decisions.
Amber, did there come a time in November of 2014 that you engaged in some couples counseling with Dr. Cowan and you and Mr. Depp?
I attempted to. I had stopped seeing my therapist in 2014. I couldn't sustain seeing her and be in a relationship with Johnny, and I chose Johnny. Eventually, Dr. Kipper introduced me to his close friend, Dr. Cowan. And I met with Dr. Cowan and agreed to let them share communication about my care, my treatment, both what I said to Cowan and what I said to Dr. Kipper, who had become my physician as well. He also put a nurse on me that would be my travel companion.
Bingo
And my
card.
travel companion would keep tabs on me and report to Dr. Kipper, who reported everything to Johnny.
Objection, hearsay. Calls for speculation.
Sustain the objection.
Okay. Okay, so tell us about the couples therapy in November 2014.
So Dr. Cowan, this man who is friends with Kipper, who's treating me, agreed to see Johnny and I together. And I don't know how many minutes of that went on before Johnny stormed out, knocked something off the table on his way out, and rolled a joint in the bathroom before storming out of the office, slamming the door.
All right, so I'm going to take you up to December of 2014, and specifically December 17, 2014. And I'm going to ask you to take what, if anything, do you recall of an incident with Mr. Depp relating to Clive Barker?
He was the sci-fi writer that I liked. Well, fantasy sci-fi writer. I kind of had a dream project based on a book that I loved of this author. He's just a weirdo genius, artist, writer. And I had a meeting with him through another director about a piece of property he wanted to make into a movie. And I just remember I believe we were at the ECB. It was in December of 2014 when Johnny found out that I had this meeting scheduled, and furious at me, accused me of having this plan to sleep with this. He was mad that I was taking the meeting at this man's house, but the man was very ill, like terminally ill, and not able to leave his bed or his home. He was under home care and very ill. And the person who was introducing us explained to me how we had to meet, and I did. And that was a big problem for Johnny. At first, it was that he was concerned about my safety, and I thought that was sweet. And there is something that I thought was sweet and romantic about that, but combined with the drinking, it was not very long before I was being accused of full on having this other plan to sleep with the writer in order to get this part that I was already being, basically offered to develop. And it was just this, he switched from he was accusing me of having this ulterior motive with this director, the director having it with me, and with this writer. And the important thing that I can try to get across in this moment is that nothing I said, no amount of explaining, apologizing, accepting, not accepting, agreeing to not go, nothing worked. Nothing changed. How mad he was at me and constantly telling me I had done something wrong to deserve what was happening. Until, of course, he takes it too far, hits me too hard, breaks too many things in the house, and then leaves, which was the pattern. And he would leave and not have to deal with the cleanup. He never had to deal with the cleanup. He never had to deal with the destruction or see me or the house that he had destroyed. He never had to deal with my face the next day. He was just go. I called it splitting. You just split. And eventually I'd get an apology of some kind, or I would get an offer to have him come over. He would offer to come over and talk or give me my peace or give me my goodbye. And in many ways, I found myself accepting that, knowing it was kind of false pretense, because I too wanted to resolve it. I didn't want him to think I was sleeping with this sci-fi writer. I didn't want him to think that I was this slut. He said I was all the time. I mean, part of me really wanted to believe that he didn't mean those things, and I wanted to get to that part of him that would tell me he didn't mean what he said and that he was acting this way because he was messed up, you know. And the cycle would repeat, I suppose.
Was there any physical violence on or around December 17, 2014?
Yes is the answer to your question. I don't really remember what happened in that fight. I remember more afterwards. I remember how apologetic he was for it. I remember him telling me he took it too far. I remember him saying, do it again. And I remember wanting to get to Christmas. You know, Christmases are hard probably for everyone. And I remember it was close enough to Christmas that I was tired. And I wanted to be in a I wanted to be in a kind, gentle, peaceful state for Christmas. I didn't want to go through a breakup this time. I didn't want to, you know, that's what I remember of that time.
Let's bring up Defendant's Exhibit 321, Michelle. And this is on 12/17/2014. Is this a text message exchange between you and Mr. Depp?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Defendant's 321.
Any objection?
So, Your Honor, just a quick minute. Your Honor, no objection.
All right, 321 in evidence. You can publish it, please.
Amber, I'm just going to turn your attention to this. This is an email exchange between you and Mr. Depp, and he says, I am truly sorry to have upset you to the degree that I have. I couldn't be more sorry for yet again ruining your day. I do, of course, take your generosity, your selflessness, your affection, and your sweet doting deeply into my heart, and I think that I've been reciprocal. Agony is never the answer to any equation or occasion, nor is rage. Please know that my apology is sincere and solid, and as stupid as it sounds, I hope your meeting with Clive Barker is excellent. You see that?
Yes.
Okay, and then you respond, thank you for your words, and you indicate you just left Betty Sue's, that's his mother?
Yes, and I then had a glass of wine with my former agent Megan.
Okay.
That afterwards, she encouraged.
Objection, hearsay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, and we can take that down. Let's bring up 325, Defendant's 325, please. And this is an email exchange the following day, 12/18/2014, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I move the admission of Defendant's 325. It's already in, it's already in, Your Honor. My apologies. We'll get that figured out at lunch. It's already in,
It's
so.
been in evidence. Does anybody over there have the list of evidence that's already in evidence?
Yes.
Okay, we're making sure.
Ours indicates it is. It's in.
It's in evidence.
Without redactions, Your Honor.
It was redacted. I don't know what
Well,
was redacted.
The redactions don't.
That's how it is in evidence, Mr. Murphy? All right, we can check. We'll check our copy.
Thank you. It's fine, Your Honor. We've confirmed.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, can be published.
Thank you.
Let me just screenshot this for Instagram.
You can't see it on your screen? All right, we'll take care of that during the break. If you could just share it there. Oh, get it? Okay, thank you. All right, good.
Okay, thank you. So this is from Mr. Depp, right? Says it's a way, I've let it go too far, went too far. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
I always regret it when I jump, or worse, when you jump. I don't want to be conditioned to continue that behavior. Therefore, I'll put in heavy work with shrink. What is your understanding of what he's referring to with shrink?
Psychologist.
Objection calls for speculation.
Did you have an understanding of what he meant?
Yes, I knew exactly what he meant.
And what did he mean?
Shrink is shrink.
What did he call shrink?
Johnny called shrinks, meaning a psychologist, therapist, shrink.
Okay. I'm sorry for being less, for your disappointment in me, for my behavior. I'm a fucking savage. You see that?
Yes,
All right. Gonna lose that, gonna lose that. The devil is all around, right? Now, you respond to this. And of course, before you go there, and he says, I am well aware I should have been bigger at the moment and that it will never again manifest in negative experiences. It can be done. What a killer concept to visualize. You see that?
yes, I do.
And you respond, I love you. I miss you already. Correct?
That's right.
And what, if anything, is that consistent with the cycle that you have described?
Well, the language he used after particularly violent episodes was savage, monster, devil. And so we ended up both calling his other side, the side of Johnny that would do and say unbelievably horrible things. It was very different from the other Johnny. That was, in my opinion, exact opposite. And this is typical of the apologies that I would get when he took it too far physically. I was encouraged because I thought it meant he understood that he could really hurt me. Sometimes I didn't think he understood how much he could hurt me physically. I mean, so after this, I had a visible bruise. I don't remember where, but I remember what other people, well, I can't say that, what they said, so. Anyway,
No, you can't, honey.
and I, in these fights, would try to stand up for myself. By December 2014. I was pushing back, I'd push him off of me, I tried to hit his hands away. I tried to always get back up, which sometimes, not sometimes, almost always made it worse. I always seemed to provoke him. But I tried. And worse, I would yell at him, I'd scream at him. I'd call him ugly names. So ashamed of the names we'd call each other. It was awful. It was awful. And we both got into that pattern. It was so, I felt so angry that this was happening to me, and it just felt so unfair, It felt like nothing I could do. It felt like nothing I could do would change the sobriety patterns. It felt like nothing I could do would stand up for him, and nothing I did made him stop hitting me. Nothing. So, I tried for over a year, maybe two, of just not responding physically, not responding verbally, just staring at him. I tried to freeze. I tried to go to a different place. I would try then lashing out verbally. I would try to threaten that if he hit me again, that I would call the police. Police were called several times, but I tried to do everything. I even threatened to leave him, and tried to leave him, and nothing was working. And I think by this point in our relationship, we're both saying awful things to each other, screaming at each other, and unfortunately, when Johnny started hitting me, he just went. I'll also describe it.
Gary, this might be a good
Okay,
time for the lunch break.
all right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our lunch break at this time until 2:00. Please do not discuss the case or do any outside research, okay? Thank you. And again, ma'am, just don't discuss your testimony with anybody this time, okay? All right, thank you. So 2:00? All right,
Thank you.
Okay, let's have a quick little sidebar before we break for lunch. So if you are a media member on my website, then I am currently adding screenshots and pictures from trial onto there right now that you can look at. I posted a picture on the Instagram for y'all, which is the emails that they just showed. So any questions on our quick sidebar? She is all over the place. Well, she's trying to find someone that she thinks believes her so she can lock in with them. Recap is basically you've not missed anything. She's just been up there spewing the same stuff that she was spewing yesterday. Really not missed too much. My husband showed me clips of her in Pineapple Express. Honestly, I would never have noticed that it was her, to be completely honest. I would have never noticed. I'm not so sure they'll get to cross today. I think they will leave her on the stand to tell her side of things so that this is the last thing that they hear before they go on quite the break. Okay, so let's break for lunch so that we can, heat up chicken ramen or whatever we're going to eat as fast as we can. I'm going to check in on TikTok real quick, and we will be back in an hour. I didn't know she was any of those either. Like, someone said she was in Pineapple Express. I was like, what? I had no idea. Okay, let's break for lunch. We'll be back in an hour, and I will see you guys shortly.